Now, I've switched so many times that it's almost become a habit. Galaxy, Infinix, OnePlus, I've basically tried them all. And every single time, it felt like I was fighting the phone just to get comfortable. Like the hardware would be amazing, but the software felt clunky. Or the cameras were incredible, but the user experience was all over the place. But then I switched to the Pixel 10 Pro XL and it was different. For the first time, it actually felt natural. Kinda like I hadn't really left the iPhone at all. The design has that same clean, minimal vibe. The menus and gestures don't make you feel lost. And even the setup process felt simple, almost Apple-like. It's smooth, it's straightforward, and the wild part is that a lot of times when you switch to Android, it feels like a compromise. You get power, but you lose that polish. But with the Pixel 10 Pro XL, it kind of feels like Google studied everything Apple did right. The simplicity, the consistency, the attention to detail, and then layered on things that Apple won't give you. Stuff like way better zoom, insane AI tools, and a display that makes the iPhone screen look kind of dim. That's why I say that this phone honestly feels like if Apple ever built an Android. And what shocked me the most was how easy it made the transition. Usually I'm second guessing myself a weekend, but with this, I felt right at home on day one. So in this video, I'll break down exactly what made the switch the easiest one that I've ever done, and the features that made me say, okay, yeah, I'm not going back. Now, for a bit of a backstory, I've been an iPhone user for a very long time, since the iPhone 5S, and if I'm being real, that phone was magical when it dropped. Sleek, ahead of its time, and it made me feel like I was holding the future in my hand. And for years I stuck with Apple because it just worked. The hardware was polished, the software was smooth, and everything felt connected. But over time the cracks kind of started to show, and the longer I stayed, the harder it was to ignore them. But let me explain. First up, battery life. This one has been a pain point for me since forever. Every iPhone that I've owned started strong, but within a year, the battery started to get pretty garbage. It's not just me either. Apple has admitted a few years back that they've been throttling performance on older iPhones as the battery degraded. They called it quote unquote performance management, but to most of us, it felt like our phones were getting worse the longer we had them. And as a consumer, that's very frustrating when you're paying over $1,000. Then there's the performance itself. See, iPhones have always had a reputation for being fast, but recently, my last iPhone felt laggy in places that I didn't expect. Animations would stutter, apps would freeze for a second, and don't even get me started on the overheating. On a hot day, or even while I'm just recording a 4K video, my phone would start to get really hot and it would really bug me. And I always thought to myself, why am I spending this much money on a phone only for it to tell you that it's too hot to use? And speaking of money, that's another reason why I kind of had to step back. See, Apple charges a premium for everything. You got to pay extra for faster chargers, and even repairs are ridiculously priced. So when you sit down and compare what you're actually getting for that price, it really just stopped making sense to me. $1,000+ for a phone that can't even hold a charge, overheats, and feels slower year by year, it's really making it hard to justify. But the biggest thing that pushed me over the edge wasn't just the hardware, it was the ecosystem lock-in. Now, don't get me wrong, Apple's ecosystem is very smooth, but it's also very restrictive. iMessage, AirDrop, iCloud, they're all amazing until you try to leave. It's kind of like being in a luxury hotel where everything is very convenient, but the doors are locked from the inside. And a lot of people don't realize this, but surveys show that one of the biggest reasons that people stick with iPhone is the fear of losing iMessage and AirDrop. And I kind of felt that too. Every time I thought about completely switching over, I second guess myself because I don't want to be the green bubble guy in a group chat. But here's the thing, the more that I thought about it, the more I realized that I was paying a premium to stay stuck, and a phone should adapt to me, not the other way around. And that's when I finally decided to step out of Apple's walled garden and give the Pixel 10 Pro XL a fair shot. Now, I didn't just wake up one morning and say, I'm done with iPhone, let me grab my Android. I've tried Galaxy phones, I've tried OnePlus, and even Infinix at one point. So if I was going to finally leave the iPhone behind, it had to be for a phone that felt like a real upgrade, not just different for the sake of being different. And that's exactly why I went with the 10 Pro XL. It wasn't just random. There are some very specific things that this phone does that no other Android, not even my iPhone, could give me. Then there's the Camera Coach. Now, okay, I love taking pictures, but I'm not a pro photographer. Camera Coach literally gives me tips while I'm lining up a shot, like step back a little or tilt your phone for better lighting, and it makes me look like I know what I'm doing, even when I don't. No iPhone, no Samsung, and no OnePlus is doing that right now. And don't get me started with the zoom. See, the Pixel 10 10 Pro XL gives me a ProRes zoom of up to 100 times. And I know what you're thinking, digital zoom usually looks very blurry, but this one is powered by generative AI and multi-frame blending, so even at 50 times or 60 times zoom, you're still getting a usable image. I took it outside, and while my old iPhone maxed out at around 30 times with a grainy mess, the Pixel let me zoom all the way in to see a sign and actually capture a clear shot, and that was pretty insane. The display was also another big deal for me. The Pixel 10 Pro XL comes with a 6.8-inch Super Actual OLED that peaks at 3300 nits, and to put that into perspective, my iPhone 15 Pro Max topped out at around 2000 nits in HDR. Outside on a sunny day, the Pixel just blows it away. I didn't have to squint or shade my screen with my hand anymore. I can actually see everything very clearly. And here's something that also sealed the deal. Google promises 7 years of software updates, and that basically gives me the comfort to say that I don't have to worry about my phone becoming obsolete in just 2 to 3 years. And knowing Google, they'll be layered with even more AI features during that time, which means that this phone is only going to get smarter the longer that I own it. So yeah, I could have stayed with the Galaxy S25 Ultra or the latest OnePlus, but here's the truth, none of them gave me this exact combination. And that's why I say, for me, this just wasn't about switching to Android, it was about switching to a phone that finally feels like if Apple decided to make an Android. Clean, simple, familiar, but with power and features that Apple just won't give you. Now, looking at the design, the first thing that I noticed when I unboxed my 10 Pro XL was just how solid it feels in hand. Google went with a spacecraft grade aluminum frame, and you can tell it's sturdy, it's dense, and it has that reassuring weight that screams premium. And at 232 grams, it's heavier than a lot of phones out there, and even a touch heavier than my iPhone 15 Pro Max. But honestly, it's the kind of heavy that makes it feel secure, like it won't slip out of your hand. The back has Gorilla Glass Victus 2 with this silky matte finish, and I love it because it doesn't turn into a fingerprint magnet like the glossy backs that we've seen on older Pixels. It has that kind of soft, almost satin-like texture that gives you grip without needing a case right away, and the matte finish really plays nicely with the colors. Then of course you have that camera bar, which is kind of the Pixel's signature design, and it's one of those things that you either love or hate, but there is a practical benefit. It keeps the phone pretty flat and stable when you sit it down on the table, no wobbling when you're typing, and it kind of makes the phone instantly recognizable, like you know a Pixel when you see one. And in terms of durability, this phone is IP68 rated, so it's resistant to water and dust. I've already used it in rainy Ohio without even thinking twice about it, and combine that with the Gorilla Glass Victus 2 on the front and back, and you've got a phone that feels like it can take real world abuse. Obviously, I'm not about to drop test it on concrete, but compared to how fragile iPhones can feel, the 10 Pro XL gives me way more confidence. Size wise, it's a pretty big phone. 6.8 inches means that it's not exactly pocket friendly if you're into compact devices, but if you're used to iPhones in the Pro Max category, the Pixel XL will definitely feel right at home. It's tall, it's wide, but surprisingly balanced, and Google did a good job of shaping the edges so that it doesn't dig into your hand even when you're holding it for long periods of time. So overall, my first hands-on impression was this. The Pixel 10 Pro XL feels like a premium flagship kinda done right. It's got the sturdiness of something that's built to last, the matte finish keeps it classy, and the design is instantly recognizable. And in terms of feel, it wasn't hard coming from my iPhone to this. Alright, let's talk about display, because this is hands down one of the biggest reasons why I switched. It runs at a Quad HD Plus resolution, and that's about 1440p, which means that it's razor sharp, and because it's LTPO, it can drop all the way down to 1 Hz when you're not doing too much. And not only can it go that low, but it can also ramp up to 120 Hz the moment that you start scrolling. So everything from animations to flipping through social feeds feels buttery smooth. But the real star here is the brightness. This screen peaks at 3300 nits. Watching HDR content on this thing is like carrying around a pocket-sized IMAX. Fire up YouTube in HDR or throw on Netflix, and you'll see colors that just pop. Deep blacks, vibrant highlights, and the contrast is just insane. I was watching some MKBHD, and again, he has the best quality, so it's always good to test it. And for gamers, that 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate combined with the crazy brightness means that even graphic heavy games like Genshin Impact or Call of Duty Mobile run smooth and look gorgeous. Shadows and highlights actually look distinct. Even small things elevated. Scrolling through Instagram Photos just don't look good, they look better than they did when I took them. And when reading text in bed, the adaptive brightness and color tuning makes it very easy on the eyes. So overall, this display isn't just an upgrade from my iPhone, it feels like an entirely new experience. The iPhone Super Retina XDR is great, don't get me wrong, but side by side, my 10 Pro XL makes it look dim and restrained. Now let's talk about performance, because that's where people usually ask, yeah, but is this thing as fast as the iPhone? Well, the 10 Pro XL is running Google's brand new Tensor G5 chip paired with 16 gigabytes of RAM. On paper, no, it's not the Snapdragon 8 Elite or Apple's A18 Bionic, and you're not going to see this phone topping Geekbench charts. But here's the thing, that's not really the story that Google is trying to tell here. Instead of chasing raw horsepower, Google tuned this chip for AI first performance, and in my day-to-day use, that's really where it shines. 10 to 15 apps open, YouTube music running in the background, Instagram, Chrome tabs, YouTube, and a game like Call of Duty Mobile, and this phone doesn't choke. The 16 gigabytes of RAM keeps everything in memory, so switching between apps feels instant, no stutters, and no waiting for reloads. Using Magic Editor to cut objects out of photos in seconds, transcribing a live conversation with zero lag, or any of the other AI just felt effortless. It's kind of like the phone anticipates when I need it and gets done before I even think about it. And when it comes to gaming, I was pleasantly surprised, and not only did the visuals stay crisp and fluid thanks to the 120Hz screen, but the phone handled it without turning into a frying pan. And sure, Apple's A series chips are monsters in raw speed, but Google was definitely better when it came to thermal management. So does the Pixel 10 Pro XL feel as fast as my iPhone? Well, in terms of raw benchmarks, no. But in terms of real world usage, the answer is yes, and sometimes even smarter. It's not really about brute force, it's about efficiency. But okay, now let's talk about the cameras, because for most people, this is where the phone either wins you over or loses you completely. And I'll be honest, the 10 Pro XL's camera system is the only phone that can truly compete with the iPhone when it comes to photos. On paper, you're getting a 50 megapixel main sensor, a 48 megapixel ultra wide, and a 48 megapixel periscope telephoto, and that periscope gives you 5 times optical zoom and can push all the way up to 100 times ProRes zoom. On the front, there's a 48 megapixel selfie camera with autofocus and a wide field of view, but numbers don't really tell the story here. It's really how Google processes these photos to squeeze magic out of these lenses. Portraits were another win. That camera coach feature actually guides you in real time and gives better framing and lighting, which I honestly thought was a gimmick at first, but when I used it, the difference was obvious. The shots had depth, clean edge detection around hair, and that subtle background blur that looked like it came from a DSLR instead of a phone. And the wide angle selfies were also pretty good. Videos had also taken a leap. The 10 Pro XL can shoot up to 8K at 30 frames per second. And while Apple still has slightly more consistent stabilization in certain scenarios, the Pixel's HDR videos still held up pretty well. But skin tones did look more natural, and thanks to Google's AI processing, even panning across felt pretty smooth. But I will be honest with you guys, I wouldn't be mad if you said that the Pixel had better photos, but I'm sorry, the iPhone is still the king of videos almost 20 years later. Now, like I said before, battery life was one of my biggest complaints with the iPhone, so when I moved to the 10 Pro XL, this was something that I was paying extra attention to. And honestly, it was good not worrying about whether my phone will survive the day. The 10 Pro XL packs a 5200 milliamp hour battery, which is a pretty big jump compared to my old 15 Pro Max. On a normal day with heavy social media use, music streaming, emails, YouTube, and even an hour of gaming thrown in, I'd usually be scrambling for a charger by late afternoon on my iPhone, but with the Pixel, I can end my day with around 20 to 25% left. That means that I can actually go out in the evening without stressing. Even in terms of on-screen time, I've been consistently getting 7 to 8 hours, sometimes more if I'm not gaming as much. And that's pretty solid endurance, especially considering that this phone powers a massive 6.8-inch Quad HD Plus 120Hz OLED panel. Standby drain was the only thing that kind of concerned me. I left my phone on overnight and I lost a good amount of battery, but I feel like Google has so much going on that this is the reason why their standby drain is worse than the Galaxy and the iPhones. Now, when it comes to charging, the Pixel supports 39-watt wire fast charging. Is it the fastest in the world? No, it's not OnePlus or Xiaomi level, but it's definitely faster than my iPhone. You can go from 0 to 50% in about 30 minutes, which is definitely enough to get me through the day. And since the battery itself is bigger, that half charge is actually more usable than that same percentage on an iPhone. Wireless charging got a nice bump too. Thanks to Qi 2.2, you get up to 25 watt wireless charging, which is almost double that you'll get on iPhone's MagSafe, so technically it's doing MagSafe even better. And if you've got earbuds or a smartwatch, the Pixel supports reverse wireless charging, so you can drop them on the back of your phone for a quick top up. And it's those little features that really put it over the iPhone for me. So after making a switch, here's my honest verdict. I'm very glad that I did. The 10 Pro XL has given me things that my iPhone just couldn't. The battery life finally lasts me a full day without anxiety. The cameras are very versatile, and it's just an overall solid phone because, let's admit, it's newer and it's more innovative. That said, I don't want to sit here and pretend that everything is perfect. There are things that I do miss about my iPhone, but besides that, it feels great to say that I stepped into something very fresh that didn't really make me completely miss my iPhone. So if you're like me and you've started to feel like you're paying too much for too little, or you're just tired of being locked into one ecosystem, the Pixel 10 Pro XL is the perfect alternative. It's powerful, it's practical, and it actually feels like it's working with me, not against me. So I don't think anyone should ditch iPhone, but for me, this switch kind of felt like freedom. And if you're even a little curious about life outside of Apple, this might be the upgrade that you've been waiting for. Peace.